Welcome back, my rogues. Today's question is, what was the worst physical pain you have ever experienced? Hope you enjoy, and check me out on Instagram. Tooth infection. I pulled some of my hair out. I could see someone killing themselves to end the pain. I was changing the brake pads on my car and the jack collapsed. The entire car crushed my arm and pinned me to the ground. It was in an apartment complex and there were people outside that heard me yelling for help. A guy and an older lady came and tried lifting the car enough for me to pull my crushed arm out. The skin was peeling off as I pulled with all my might. Once I felt some pressure release, and just before my arm was out, the car slipped out of the lady's hands and crushed my hand. At this point I'm trying to get her to lift for 2 more seconds so I can get my arm out, and after what felt like an eternity I finally got it out. I can't describe what having your arm and hand crushed feels like, but it was the most intense pain I've ever felt. I kept going unconscious because of the pain until they hooked me up in the ambulance. Kidney stones. I'm pretty susceptible to them as it runs in my family, so I have to drink a lot of water. I've gotten kidney stones 2 or 3 times within my life so far. I don't want any more, so I'm extra cautious. Septic shock with systemic organ failure. Was later told it's the closest to dying you can feel without actually dying. 100,010 don't recommend. A few years ago, I was going to the dentist often since my teeth were damaged due to teeth grinding. After he fixed like 5 teeth, he's like, "Oh, we missed something here," and he started diving into my tooth without any anesthesia, going, "Shush. It doesn't hurt." It was the last time I went to see him. I have a condition called proctalgia fugax. This is an uncontrollable spasming of the rectum and can last anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour and a half. It always happens in the middle of the night and feels like I've been probed by aliens without lube. They don't know what causes it, but I can go months without an attack and then 2 or 3 nights in a week. It is fucking brutal. When I was in 6th grade I had a botched appendectomy. It had burst during surgery and the didn't get it all cleaned out. After getting home my lower abdomen was swollen and red for a while, so they took my back to the hospital. It had gotten very infected. They had to reopen the wound and leave it open for over a week so they could clean it and fill the wound with gauze like 6 times a day. Sitting up when I had to was bad, but removing the bandage to take out gauze, spraying the open wound with what I assume was antibiotics, and then stuffing new gauze into me was unreal. Cervical biopsy. I've shattered an ankle, gotten right back up, trimmed 4 more horses' hooves plus the one who crushed my ankle before driving 2.5 hours back home investing the mush inside my boot. I've broken fingers, metatarsal bones, toes, so many ribs, both ankles, have had crushing injuries that left permanent deformations. I've left a 4x4 chunk of skin adhered to a motorcycle tailpipe that stretched off my leg like cheese off pizza, and kept doing whatever I was doing. 60 seconds of my 3rd cervical biopsy was hands down 1000x worse than all of it put together and more. I puked, passed out, and have legit PTSD. Never again. I'll die of cancer first. I had testicular torsion, twice impaled through the leg, temporarily blinded, run over, almost had the head of my dick bit off, which was in so much pain I held in my piss for a week till I exploded and it felt like my dick was being torn in half. But I think out of all of that, nothing is quite as physically painful as true emotional trauma. Like, you wouldn't think so, because it's emotional, but when your heart breaks, Jesus, it really breaks. But also testicular torsion. When I was like 9 I was about to go over to a friend's house when suddenly my stomach started killing me out of nowhere. I had no idea what was going on. It had never happened before and it was absolutely horrible. My mum took me to the doctor and they had no idea what was wrong. Like 3 years later they finally figured out I had ulcerative colitis, which is a chronic disease that's not usually fatal, but it does cause bloody stools and major intestinal pain. Then when they gave me medicine for it, I kept getting really sick, and it wasn't working. Eventually I figured out it was the medicine that was making me sick, but no one believed me for like a week. They finally realized that I was part of a very small minority that was allergic to that specific medicine. Then I got something else that worked significantly better, and my UC has barely been an issue since. I accidentally hammered my penis one time. I was hammering nails in a weird position, with each leg hanging of one side of the plank. The nail was being hammered about a 1/4 foot from my crotch. I sneezed mid-swing and the hammer hit hard. It didn't leave any lasting injuries, but it hurt like hell, and preening did too for a week. When I was 16 I was racing around my little course on my room 250. I hit a jump wrong and crashed hard. One of the last things I remember was coming down headfirst on the end of my handlebars, destroying the visor and hitting my helmet hard enough it cracked it. While still sliding, the broken brake handle stabbed me in the side of my upper leg, just below waistline, and sliced it open all the way to just above my knee. Wind knocked out of me. I was out for I don't know how long. When this happened, there were people there watching, other kids in the neighborhood. When I came to catching my breath while simultaneously screaming from pain, there was no one there. They all just took off. Tried to get up and move. Tried to take a step and just fell. Bleeding everywhere. Tissue hanging off. This is before cell phones and was in my family's pasture, far from the house. In more pain than I've ever known. My only option was get my bike started. Tore my right leg open so I couldn't kickstart it. I got it stood up and had to lay across it and get it started using my hand. I can't describe how painful all this was. I made it back home and collapsed. Doctor told me adrenaline is a hell of a thing since I was able to get myself home. And no one who was out there got help. They just left me there. Thank you, kind stranger, for the silver. My first award. One time not too long ago, winter had just ended and my allergies were getting pretty bad, so I took some Benadryl and went on a boat ride with one of my friends. I had like 2 cans of soda and a big bottle of water, and after about 15 minutes on the boat I realized I had to pee, but I discovered that when I take Benadryl I can't pee urinary tract, I think, and we were in the middle of nowhere on a boat. And we still had about 4 hours to go. After a while it got super fucking bad and it was excruciating pain, and we tried to get back, but it took a while, and I'm very surprised my bladder didn't leak or I didn't get a UTI. After I got home it hurt so bad to pee I had to sit on the toilet for about 30 minutes and do short spurts. After that I decided to never get into a situation like that ever again. A splinter under my thumbnail about 34 of the way down. There is a reason that sticking things under people's nails is a legitimate torture method. My period cramps. IDKY, but mine are extremely painful. All my friends and sisters don't ever get it as painful as me, and I'm so jealous. When I get them, I just end up crying for hours, throwing up, knocking myself out, and sleeping for 5 years to get rid of the pain. When I was like 17, I got up one morning really thirsty and went to the kitchen, filled up a big glass of cold water and started chugging. Chug one. Immediately I felt something wrong. I felt it go all the way down my throat and into my stomach like a rock. My stomach felt like it was 10 sizes too small, and that one gulp filled it up like 70, but the problem was gulps 2 and 3 were already activated and I couldn't stop myself in time. Gulp 2 felt like it stretched my stomach to 120, and gulp 3 actually felt like my stomach pouch tore open. I fell to my knees and just stayed for like 3 minutes analyzing the interior of my body to see if I could feel stomach acid spilling into my body cavity. Thankfully I was fine to this day. I don't do that anymore. I take a sip, and if everything is okay, then I proceed drinking. Nerve pain in my jaw. I have a damaged branch of my trigeminal nerve that initially took about 4 months to diagnose. I cannot begin to describe the horror of nerve pain. I have been awake at 2 a.m. wondering if it is possible to die from pain. It's not possible according to my pain specialist. Really lucky to have great doctors. Cervical dilation during infertility treatment. If one of the problems might be the cervix is too small to let the sperm in, they put a plug of seaweed inside the cervix and leave it there for 24 hours. It swells up, stretching out the cervix to improve chance of pregnancy. Oh my god, it was so far beyond cramps. I just curled up and cried for hours. I was born missing one of my adult teeth, so I needed a false tooth to replace it. I had a surgery to insert a titanium rod into my skull, and once that had healed I would have a porcelain tooth attached to it. Well, I get to my dentist 3 months after the initial surgery and she gets a special screwdriver and starts unscrewing the cap. Except she's going the wrong direction. She thinks it's stuck, so she pushes harder. I start to feel the flesh in my head pulling, then ripping, and the sharp pain of bone splintering. I scream and try to push this lady out of my mouth, and she looks at me with the most condescending face and says, "It doesn't hurt that bad, you need to calm down, and that's why I'm afraid of dentists." Somatic pain. I have an anxiety disorder and I often somatize. That means turning excess anxiety into physical pain. This pain may be mild and just uncomfortable, but on a bad day it can be so severe that I cannot walk or breathe without feeling like I'm going faint. I stubbed my toe once. When I was in 2nd grade, one was jumping on my trampoline with my older brother and he tripped me while I was really high in the air, and I was near the edge when he tripped me and I fell off and landed on my arm. I dislocated my arm and shattered one of my bones in the arm and cracked the other. I now have nerve damage in my arm. When I was 5, me and my family had just arrived at our vacation hotel. I was super psyched since the car ride was like 8 hours. I walked up to the pool door with flip-flops on and flung the door open right on my foot. It pulled my big toenail on my right foot clean off, and it bled for a super long time. Took the better part of a year for it to heal fully. I've given birth to 3 kids, and I still think the last toothache I had was worse than that. Pepper spray. It felt like someone shoving glass covered with fire into my eyes. IUD insertion or breaking my femur. Former 500-pound human and had severe spinal stenosis of the L4, L5, L5S1. It put me in a wheelchair. After I had lost a significant amount of weight, had to eventually undergo back surgery due to the pain. 1,800 milligrams of gabapentin a day to walk 6 feet, sit on a stool, take another few steps, repeat until I could get into the shower to bathe. Fuck all of that pain. Would have thought I'd lose the weight and be in physically worse shape. I wouldn't wish that uber sciatica pain on anyone. Full body staph infection. I had an ingrown toenail when I was younger that was pretty bad, infected, and had to book day surgery for it. Doctor injects the freezing twice without much success, but we still go ahead with it. The removal of the nail was one thing, but he hacked away at the nail bed to prevent it from growing back in the future, and it was pure torture. I apparently went sheet white as the doctor went full hostel on my toe. I will never leave an ingrown nail untreated for that long. A couple weeks ago I had an ear infection. Basically my head felt like it was imploding constantly, and sometimes pain meds didn't help. I get bad migraines that feels like I am getting stabbed in the head and shot at the same time until I go to sleep or I throw you. Poured a good cup or so of fresh off the boil water on my hand by accident and knew it was gonna be bad when it felt cold instead of hot. Childbirth. I've had a few gooders, but the worst was blowing out my shoulder snowboarding, and when I opened my eyes it felt like my arm was in front of me, but it was off to an awful angle to the side. The medics pretending not to panic while I lost feeling and circulation down my arm was a trip. Only puked a couple times. Ended up with a couple annihilated rotator cuffs and a completely torn bicep. Drugs were good and I ended up in rehab shortly after surgery. Those were the days. I have had a few weird medical issues in my life which I attribute to my never getting sick. Things include a Wilms tumor and subsequently losing a kidney, temporarily flattening the tendon in my foot arch while jumping a fence, stubbing my toe to the point of stitches, and dislocation my kneecap so bad I thought it was my ACL or meniscus and popping it about once a year since then. Was the thing though, hydrocele, not because of the actual ailment, but because of the treatment. Around middle school, my balls started to grow. My idiot ass thought this was puberty and thought nothing about it. But they kept growing and growing and growing. Finally, when they were the size of a grapefruit and horribly uncomfortable, I decided I would mention something to my mother. I prefaced the situation with my idiot assumptions. But when I pulled down my pants to show her the problem, her reaction was unexpected to say the least. She straight up asked if I was stupid. But since I was like 13, she knew the answer. We go to the doctor, who explains some fluid has drained from my torso into a membrane sac in the scrotum, which has caused the expansion of my balls. He says it is a simple outpatient operation where they drain my balls, not in a good way. Remove the membrane, and everything should be cool for the procedure. I'm under heavy anesthesia and wake up with normalish balls, except they have installed this stent that will remain in place for a week while residual fluid drains into some gauze. I need to change the gauze daily, and in a week the stent will be removed. None of this is a problem for the week I have it, although it would hurt if the tip of the stent brushed my thigh wrong. When I show up for the removal, I figure there would be additional drugs like the first procedure. Yeah, I was wrong. Doctor asked me to drop drawers to take a look. No problem, until he grabs the forceps. Whoa, doc, no meds? No, this will be fine. Well, the stent that I thought was only like maybe 2 inches long in the scrotum happened to be like 9 inches long in my torso. I swear to God he removed it as slow as possible, and its entire path was next to my raw testicle. It continuously brushed it upon removal, and felt like a sustained kick to the balls for what was probably 15 seconds to top it all off. After it was out, I asked about the incision hole in my balls, and he says it will heal up on its own. Fucking wonderful experience all around. Childbirth and the periurethral and perineal tears afterwards. A close second was getting a MRSA infection in my knee and having it scraped out with no local anesthesia. Migraines. 10-14 hour stints of laying on the bathroom floor hoping for relief from the vomiting and the extreme pressure in my head while slivers of light pierce like needles directly into my brain. I thought about punching something just to channel pain to another part of my body. An ovarian cyst exploded while I was underway. It was just a sudden, blinding pain in my side that sent me to my knees. I felt nothing but a tingle of heat after the initial burst. It was absolutely terrifying. At the time I didn't know what it was because I hadn't been diagnosed with anything. It didn't feeling like the right place for an appendix, because I'm not a medical person. Better safe than sorry. As soon as I could stand I went to medical but got handed some Motrin and basically shoved out the door. Barely a footnote in my file. It wasn't until years later I had evidence of extreme scarring and damage from that burst. Scary to think that the tingle of heat was me bleeding internally and could have resulted in my death. I now get 20 disability for my PCOS because of that incident, so fuck the Navy. Edit, you know. Someone else posted about being pepper sprayed and it vividly brought back memories of my OC. Oleoresin capsicum spray certification course, and that was worse. He'll go through a dozen cyst explosions before OC spray again. Got stung by a Portuguese man of war when I was 13-30 now. I have since torn ligaments, broken bones, been badly cut and had a couple of decent burns. Nothing will ever compare to that searing pain. It was like sitting on a grill for a few hours. Labor contractions, perineal anesthetic injection, gallbladder inflammation blockage, my lung collapsing, abscess tooth, God that sucked. When I got to the dentist, it was so bad the Novocaine didn't numb me at all. He started drilling until I wished I was dead. Then I felt a gush and saw him flinch and instantly felt relief. He explained it was like popping a zit but instead of skin, between tooth and bone. Broken ribs. I couldn't breathe without pain. Coughing, sneezing, getting in and out of bed, lifting my arms, twisting my body. Pretty much any movement of my body was enough to have me in tears. It is something I would never wish upon my worst enemy. The pain in my heart when I first found out that dogs don't live as long as humans. No joke. I did a hot wing challenge at a restaurant. I needed to eat 13 wings and only got through 4 before vomiting all over the floor. For the next 30 minutes it was just unrelenting, escalating pain inside my mouth. I made a big scene inside that restaurant. Waking up to back spasms. Dropping a kettle of freshly boiled water onto my thigh. Can't even begin to describe the pain.
Hope you liked this video. Stay frosty, my rebels.